Good Saturday morning to you, everyone. Glad to have you here today. And if you want to follow along, we'll be in the 14th chapter of the book of Acts, beginning in verse 8. We have these words. Now at Lystra there was a man sitting who could not use his feet. He was crippled from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul speaking, and Paul, looking intently at him and seeing that he had faith to be made well, said in a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet." And he sprang up and began walking. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voice, saying in Lycaonian, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And the priest of Zeus, whose temples was at the entrance to the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. As they get to Lystra, a little bit different scenario. Ordinarily, we see Paul preaching in the synagogues when he would go to a town. Evidently, there was no synagogue in Lystra, and so he is apparently preaching on the streets and sharing Christ with people on the streets. Anybody that would stop and listen, wherever he could gather a crowd. And while he was there, it says there is man that is sitting there that has been crippled his entire life, and so he is preaching, speaking to this man, and began to talk to him. And we see these people as they are. I'm sure there's a crowd gathered around. We see that end result. From reading the story, it really kind of seems that maybe this crippled man is the only one who's really giving Paul much of an audience. We don't see really anything else at this point, but it appears at this point he is the only one who really seems to be paying attention. But again, I'm not trying to be funny here, but he was a crippled man who had never walked. He didn't have much choice. He was kind of a captive audience for Paul, and so he kind of had to sit there and listen. And so this man has never walked. He heard Paul, and it says his heart was open. He was able to hear, and Paul looked at him, and he had faith to be made well. It stirred his heart, what Paul was saying. Paul tells him to stand up, and the man sprang up, or he jumped up. He didn't have to get up like a lot of us and hold on to something and pull himself up. He jumped out. Paul didn't even help him up, didn't touch the man. He simply spoke to the man, and the power of Christ and the faith that this man had healed his legs, and he was able to stand up. And what we have here is a couple of lessons, really. Even we see as we go on how the crowds responded. These are the gods come down to us, and they called Barnabas Zeus and Paul Hermes, and they obviously they are a superstitious, God worshiping, little g God worshiping type of people, and they are, that's their nature, and as that because of the way they respond to this, and so we need to. One of the lessons I see there is to understand that we have a lot of people around us who believe a lot of strange things in our world still today, but they are reachable. And so this large crowd comes together, and they're all just shouting and amazed. These people who a few minutes ago it appears were not paying Paul any attention, now they're all excited, and they're thrilled to death to have Paul and Barnabas in their town, and again they identify them with Zeus and Hermes, or Jupiter and Mercury, and all the wild myths and stories that went along with them. That what they're saying is that gods, again the mythological gods, had came down to earth as humans and were working among them, and when they did. The priest of Zeus. There obviously doesn't appear to be a synagogue in town, but there was a temple to Zeus in town. And so the priest comes and he wants to offer up sacrifices and honor these men for what they have done. And there's it's a really neat story when you read it, but let's look for a few lessons in it rather than just kind of being a little bit amazed and maybe even a little bit tickled by the way this story turns out. First of all, is we see once again the power of God to heal. We see the ability of God to save even someone from such a background, a superstitious, mythological, little g God worshiping people. That the truth can, as the Bible says, set you free. And then we see one of the sad lessons is that even when God does work, we see that there are some who won't believe it, who won't accept it, who want to give the credit to someone else and don't believe that it's God at work. And so there's a couple of great lessons for us today. And I hope you'll take I think what is really, for me, one of the key lessons here is you go out this weekend, as you go among people, that we remember that we are surrounded by Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and more atheists than we'd like to admit, Satan worshipers more than we'd like to admit, but none of them, just like this crippled man, are beyond the reach of the grace of God. And so wherever you go today, wherever you go this weekend, you take the message of Jesus Christ. You never know, like this crippled man who may be listening, who may be hearing your words and need to hear the gospel today. Think about it. We'll see you here Monday morning.